and welcome. It's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Global Child Nutrition Foundation, GCNF, and the International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI, to episode 2 of the webinar series entitled School-Based Interventions in the 21st Century, Evidence Gaps and Future Directions. My name is Arlene Mitchell, and I'm the Executive Director of GCNF. In today's webinar, we're focusing on optimizing school food environments. When we talk about school food environments, we're talking about the ways that children encounter food in or around their schools, from the meals on their plates and the messages on classroom walls to the snacks sold in or around schools and the advertisements that they see or hear. A truly healthy food environment would maximize children's exposure to nutritious options and positive eating cues. It would balance nutritional adequacy, budget limits, environmental footprint, and cultural acceptability. But finding the right combination of availability, affordability, adequacy, acceptability, and environmentally friendly food poses a complex puzzle for policymakers, planners, implementers, and for researchers too. Food environments are not just complex and multidimensional, they're also context and time specific, and they're complicated by the multiple influences and influencers and the messages that reach children every day. If you think about it, most days children move in and out of at least 2 food environments, their home environment and their school environment. If they go to a market or to a store, they're in another food environment. Food and drinks are often offered around sports fields, parks, and playgrounds. Their friends and their friends' families can also influence their food choices. And if they connect to social media, watch television, listen to the radio, they're likely to be exposed to additional food messages and food influencers. Those of us involved in school meal programs most commonly have been concerned about what's served to children at school, what's on the school food plate. We've also been concerned about whether the children have had breakfast at home before arriving at school, and in some cases, we also consider how far they've had to walk to arrive at school as an indicator of how hungry they might be when they arrive. We know, however, that as we focus on optimizing school food environments, as we continue to seek evidence regarding what works on and around the schoolyard, we need to take at least the most frequently encountered other influencing factors into account. So with that as background, I'll now tell you a little bit about the agenda for today's session. First, note that we have 3 presentations, one right after the other, with space for Q&A at the end. Because we want to be sure to address your questions, we'll need you to submit them as we proceed. You should be able to see a Q&A option at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please type your questions there. We'll be collecting them as we move through the presentations, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end. Now for the agenda. I'll soon begin by giving some highlights of what we're learning about school food environments from the 3rd GCNF Global Survey of School Meal Programs conducted in 2024 and focused on the school year that began in 2022. We will then have the opportunity to hear from Patricia Eustachio Colombo. Patricia is a postdoctoral researcher from the Karolinska Institutet. She will present key findings from her study called Optimizing School Meals, Integrating Food and Nutrient Standards with Aspects of Affordability, Cultural Acceptability, and Environmental Sustainability. We will then hear from His Excellency Fadi Yarak, Director General of Lebanon's Ministry of Education and Higher Education. Mr. Yarak will present the ways that Lebanon's National School Meal Program is working to improve food environments in and around schools in their country, highlighting the evolving experiences, challenges, and best practices. Following these presentations, we'll turn to Sam Scott. Sam is a research fellow at IFPRI, focused on nutrition, diets, and health. Sam will open the floor for questions and comments from the audience, drawing from the questions that you submit during the presentations. Okay, now I'll begin by grounding us in some of the data from the Global Survey of School Meal Programs. First slide, please. So the Global Survey has collected extensive standardized data from 167 governments around the world. This supports global comparisons and evidence-based decision-making. The survey covers a wide range of topics related to school meal programs, including a number of questions pertaining to school food environments. This chart shows the food environment policies and actions among the countries that participated in the 2024 survey. Most countries reported that food was generally available for purchase on or near school grounds in their country, meaning that regardless of the food children are offered through their school meal program, they're likely being exposed to other, perhaps unhealthy foods as well on or near the schools. That said, 52% of countries had some national level prohibitions on foods that were permitted on or near school grounds. This was most common in lower middle income countries. The survey also asked about any national level limitations on marketing. Across all countries that participated in the survey, 72% reported some limitations on food marketing on school grounds, and 66% reported even broader limitations on food marketing targeted at children. Next slide, please. So the survey asked about approaches to prevent or mitigate overweight or obesity. The prevalence of overweight and obesity among school children has risen dramatically over the past few decades and everywhere in the world, including in low-resource environments. Schools can play a pivotal role in addressing this issue if they offer healthier, more balanced meals and provide information on healthy food choices. Nevertheless, despite the rising problem of overweight and obesity, just 37% of school meal programs cited an objective to prevent or control overweight or obesity. And this was most common in the northern countries of Europe, Central Asia, and North America, and also in Latin America and the Caribbean. Even though programs were hesitant to identify obesity prevention as an overall objective, many of them at least took some steps to prevent or mitigate the problem. For example, 73% of programs coupled the provision of food with nutrition education oriented toward teaching healthy eating, and 52% were paired with physical education to encourage exercise. Nutritional requirements for food baskets were enforced in 46% of the programs, and 35% of programs had food restrictions on or near school grounds to reduce students' access to unhealthy food. Next slide, please. School meal programs are very often paired with at least some complementary services or education programs to enhance the program's effectiveness or to leverage on the program to extend its benefits beyond the provision of food. School gardens are especially common. 68% of programs said that they were paired with some school gardens, and this figure was highest in low and lower middle income countries, with 84% of programs in LMICs reporting school gardens. The gardens were most often used to produce some products for the students' consumption in 92% of the program, for example, but in some cases, the gardens were also explicitly used to teach lessons on nutrition or agriculture. Next slide, please. Exposing children to healthy school meals has the potential to cultivate healthy eating habits, which children can carry with them into later years. We have another episode 4 of this webinar series, where we'll be taking a deeper dive into school meal menu design and quality, and you might want to tune into that webinar as well. One way school feeding programs are shaping food choices is by integrating more climate-friendly food choices into school menus. Around 38% of programs worldwide targeted foods that were considered by the government appointed focal points responding to the survey to be climate-friendly. In the survey definitions, climate-friendly is listed as foods whose production improves or does no harm to the environment, or which substitute for foods that are more harmful to the environment. So examples of climate-friendly foods are plant-based proteins like lentils and beans, whole grains, and locally grown fruits and vegetables. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation. Remember, if you have specific questions related to this or any of today's presentation, you just need to go to the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen and write your question there. Also, you can use any of the options on this slide to get more information about GCNF and the global survey, or to contact us for any reason. I'd now like to welcome Patricia Eustachio Colombo. Patricia is a postdoctoral researcher from Karolinska Institutet, and she will present the findings of her research study, Optimizing School Meals, Integrating Food and Nutrient Standards with Aspects of Affordability, Cultural Acceptability, and Environmental Sustainability, featuring some key findings from Sweden and Ghana. Over to you, Patricia.
Thanks very much, Arlene, for that very nice introduction. So as Arlene said, I'm Patricia, and I'm a researcher at Karolinska Institutet in Stockholm, but I'm also affiliated to the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and the MRC Epidemiology Unit at the University of Cambridge. And today I will be presenting some work from both Ghana and Sweden, where we have used optimization both as a policy support tool as well as a tool to improve menus in practice. And I'm going to start this talk by providing some insight into some of the initial thoughts behind this research and some of the challenges that it's trying to address. So if you think about planning a meal for yourself, now we all might have different priorities, but if we imagine that we would want to plan a meal that is both nutritious but also climate friendly, then we might end up with this plate. And to be honest, if you ask me, I think it looks great. But then when we calculate the nutrient content, we realize that it's actually lacking a few essential nutrients. So we have to rethink our planning. And we decide to remove the beans and replace it with some salmon. Great. The nutrient profile is improved dramatically, so we have all the nutrients we need. However, we're now increasing our climate impact and the cost of the meal, and we don't have the budget or the conscience to do this. So we remove everything that we think is expensive and that has a high climate footprint, and we end up with this, which has a lower climate impact. It's cheaper than the initial meal that we planned, but again, we have these issues with not covering all the nutrients that we need. And it's also not, super palatable, at least not for me, to just eat beans and greens. So planning meals, it is a complex task for the human mind to solve. And it's exactly this kind of challenges that the people planning meals for example, schools are facing on a daily basis. So in that case, what are the options in a reality where our diets and meals need to fulfill multiple goals, such as nutrient adequacy, food-based dietary guidelines, costs, environmental impacts, and palatability? Well, we've used something called linear optimization or linear programming. And briefly, linear optimization is the application of an algorithm to either minimize or maximize a linear objective function, subjected to a set of linear constraints. So what the algorithm does is that it tries to find the best compromise, or in other words, the optimal solution for meeting all these different goals or priorities that we might have. And for example, we might want to use this method to design a menu that has the minimum amount of climate footprints, while at the same time meeting a set of cost and nutrient constraints or goals. How can this be applied in the context of school meals? Well, we've used it in two different contexts, Ghana and Sweden. And we've used it both as a policy support tool, but also as a way to improve menus in practice. So I will be presenting some experiences from that, but we'll also be presenting some key insights and remaining gaps that we've identified through our research. If we start by the work that we did in Ghana, this is a QR code to the paper that I will be speaking about. It's a preprint, so it's not published, but it's out there if you would like to read it. The work that we did stems from a collaborative effort between IFPRI, the FAO, the WFP, the University of Copenhagen, and Karolinska Institutet to support the Ghana school feeding program. And here we use these linear programming models to provide insight into the setting of an appropriate budget for school meals, to better understand the feasibility of newly developed food-based recommendations for school meals, to understand how future inflation potentially could impact the optimization results or the school food baskets, but also try to unpack the role of operational costs in shaping the results. And the optimization that we did, I think it's the most multifaceted work that I've done because we considered quite a few different things in the different scenarios. So to start with, we had two different baseline school food baskets that we worked with. We had the current school food basket as a baseline, the first baseline, and that represented all the foods used to produce meals for children in Ghana today. And then we had a manually improved school food basket. So this is kind of the current school food basket was manually improved to contain more protein-rich foods. So both of them were they provided the baseline that we then optimized. And in the optimization models, we had different types of constraints or priorities that we would like to meet or fulfill. As for cost, we had either the current cost of a school meal or the current budget. We had an increased budget to see how that would impact the results, but then we had a model where we didn't have a constraint on a budget or cost. So the model could choose freely without being limited by cost. Then we tested models with and without adjusting for a 20% operational cost, and then models where we tested with or without adjusting for a 12% price increase due to an anticipated inflation. We also had nutrient and food-based constraints, and these were developed for school meals in Ghana through stakeholder consultation workshops led by the FAO, using FAO and WFP methodologies. In our models, all our models had the nutrient constraints that had to be met. And then some models had these food-based constraints, whereas some did not. And I will explain a little bit more about that shortly. And as for acceptability, which is an important factor because we can design these optimally nutritious and affordable meals, but they need to be acceptable for the students to consume them. And that's the most important thing. So in that regard, we made sure that the optimization or the optimized school food baskets were maximally similar to the baseline school food baskets. And then we also had additional constraints on individual foods and food groups. So we limited the amount or the amount of deviation that those could have from baseline values. So what did the baseline school food baskets look like? Let's start there. If we look at the current school food basket and the baseline and compare that to the nutrient targets that were developed for a school lunch in Ghana, we can see that it's the current school food basket is lacking, or it's below the reference values for all the nutrients. If looking at the baseline manually improved school food basket, we can see that there are actually some improvements that have been made by these manual changes to the menus. However, there are still some gaps that needed to be addressed with the optimization. And I should mention that the baseline the baseline for the current meals, we collected menu data across 10 different districts and 5 regions in Ghana to have that kind of baseline school food basket to work from. What did the optimized school food baskets look like? Well, first of all, they were all nutritionally adequate, so they met all the nutrient requirements that we set from the beginning. What we noticed was that we weren't able to run the model with both the food-based constraints and the acceptability constraints at the same time. So we ran one set of models with only the food-based constraints together with the nutrient and cost constraints, and then one set of models with the acceptability constraints together with the cost and nutrient constraints. What we found when we only had the food-based constraints was that these models either removed entire food groups, but also produced large increases in other food groups. So we can see that food groups such as fats and oils and grains were removed completely, whereas animal foods were increased by 24-fold. And we also had large increases in legumes, nuts and seeds, and roots and tubers. And this is not because the food-based constraints or targets were badly designed in any way. This just shows that the current meals are far away from what they should be, and that the algorithm is then forced to choose the food groups and the foods that are in the food-based targets over other food groups due to the limited budget. And also to mention that when we impose only the acceptability constraints, the school food basket is a little bit more balanced, and there are no food groups that are completely eliminated, but we still have these very large increases in some of the food groups. We continue on and look at what the optimized school food baskets looked like, and focus on the right-hand column, the ARD. So the ARD stands for the average relative deviation, and that is showing how much food items in the optimized school food basket deviate from baseline amounts on average. So it's a measure of how different the school food basket, the optimized school food basket, is from the baseline. And I think this kind of mirrors what we saw in the previous slide. So we see that the ARD is lower when the food-based constraints are excluded and when we only have the acceptability constraints. But we also saw that in the improved models, where we have the manually improved menus as a baseline, those optimizations required less deviation to achieve all the targets that we had, indicating that the manual improvement of the current menus was indeed an improvement, even if some gaps still remained. And then if we focus on the last row, which is the model where we didn't have a constraint on cost, we see that the average relative deviation is by far the lowest. And this is the model where we actually were able to have both food-based constraints and acceptability constraints. However, this model is also almost 9 times more expensive than the currently available budget, thus highlighting the important trade-offs between program financing, food quality, and coverage. So that was all I had for the Ghana paper. If we move to Sweden, we there used optimization first to see if school meals could be designed to be nutritious, affordable, acceptable, and more climate friendly. So in Sweden, most schools have fully nutritious meals, and this is for many reasons. It's also, one of them is that it's been enacted in law since 2011 that school meals have to be nutritious. So a lot of work is now being done to make school meals more climate friendly. So it's a completely different, context with different needs and different challenges. We also wanted to see if the optimized school food baskets could be translated to new recipes and menus. And we wanted to see if these menus, new recipes and menus, if introduced in a real world setting, would impact food waste, consumption, and school meal satisfaction. And we did this optimization work in a 3-step approach. So first, similar to what we did in Ghana, we optimized school food baskets. We had constraints on nutritional adequacy, acceptability, and also climate impact in this case. Then, together with a meal planner, which worked in the municipalities that we collaborated with, we designed new recipes and menus using these optimized school food baskets. And then we tested these new sustainable menus in 2 pre-post intervention studies and 1 controlled trial. What did the optimized school food baskets look like? Well, in the optimization, we were able to reduce the climate impact by 28 to 40%, depending on the school and the study. So some schools had done some more work to try and reduce their climate impact. So kind of the relative reduction to our target, which was 500 grams of carbon dioxide equivalents per meal, was lower. And that target, by the way, comes from the World Wildlife Fund, based on calculations that they made from the IPCC, latest IPCC reports. When we look at the ARDs, we see that the deviation on average for each food was quite low compared to Ghana, so only 15% compared to 1,500 and plus in Ghana. And this is partly due to the fact that, as I said, the school meals in Sweden are in general already nutritious, so there isn't an issue that the algorithm needs to work towards achieving nutritional adequacy. And the other thing is that the diversity of foods is much larger if you compare the school food baskets for Sweden compared to Ghana. As for cost, we saw an 11% reduced cost. So here we actually didn't have cost constraints. We just had, because we saw that when we were running the models, the cost automatically dropped. So on average, an 11% reduced cost to achieve these nutritious, climate-friendly, affordable school meals. On a food group level, the optimization in general led to increases in vegetables and fruits, cereals, and decreases in meat and dairy, not surprisingly. How did the new menus impact acceptability of school meals? Well, in this graph, you can see the consumption per pupil before the intervention at baseline on the left-hand side and during the intervention on the right-hand side. And we see that there is a large day-to-day variation, but when we ran the interrupted time series analysis to compare the whole baseline period compared to intervention when we tested these new sustainable school meals, we didn't find in any of the studies significant changes in food waste consumption or school meal satisfaction, indicating that this approach led to school meals that children would actually accept. And just some conclusions and remaining gaps. I think from the work that we've done, I would like to say that optimization can be a useful support tool for policy development and meal planning, and especially for understanding the complex synergies and trade-offs between nutrition adequacy, cost effectiveness, cultural acceptability, and environmental sustainability, as Arlene mentioned in the beginning. Number 2, optimization can deliver menus with improved profiles that children actually accept. And also to mention that we did some qualitative research with the children participating in the intervention schools. And there was, I'm not going to say too much about that, but there is a study that I can refer to which digs into how they experience the whole intervention and their views on what could make children eat more plant-based foods. However, I think this is kind of the gap that we identified. When scenarios get more complex, especially like in the work that we did in Ghana, results are not always easily interpretable without an expert. And by an expert, I mean a researcher, thus limiting scalability in practice. And by that, I would like to thank all of you for listening. And a special thanks to all the amazing colleagues that I've had the privilege to work with. And also a big thanks to my niece and my two nephews that provided their hands for the cover of my PhD thesis that was published in 2021. So with that, I'd like to hand over back to Arlene.
Thank you, Patricia. That was fascinating. And I'm sure we'll get some more good questions coming from the audience. I saw that a few popped up, but remember to write those questions in the Q&A space at the bottom of your screens. And we'll now change gears on geography a bit, and we'll learn next about Lebanon's efforts to improve the school food environments in their country. We are honored to have His Excellency Fadi Yarak, Director General of Lebanon's Ministry of Education and Higher Education, with us today. Mr. Yarak will talk about efforts being made in Lebanon, highlighting the experience so far, the challenges and best practices they found in the Lebanon context. Welcome, Mr. Yarak.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks, Arlene, and thank you for for your presence. It's a pleasure for me to present. It's a pleasure for me to present Lebanon's school food environment highlights on our experience and challenges and best practices. Well, this project began. Okay? This project began, and this journey began in 2015, ultimately as a response to the Syrian crisis and to reach Lebanese vulnerable children. So in 2015, we began with 11,000 students and 23 schools. In 2025, we reached around 421 schools, and our target by end of 25-26 school year to reach 130,000 students. Mainly, they are children coming from social and economic challenged background and refugees. And the target age are from KGs with the 3 years old to 14. What are we offering? So the school feeding activities mainly is the bulk, and the big part is the ready-to-eat snacks, and it's mainly some milk and fruits. And here a daily package is delivered to the students, and we are reaching 272 schools with approximately 85,000 students. The second initiative is the school kitchen cold meals, where mothers, they volunteer and they prepare cold meal. And it's actually operating in 24 kitchens, reaching 27,000 students in 8 governorates over the country. The third initiative is the satellite school kitchen cold meals, where also we distribute to the satellite schools cold meal for the schools. So all these programs, the idea is to support local production and trying to stimulate local economy. Other activities came as a support over the years, mainly when we did some activities on learning recovery. So part of the retention program is to support students with a package of dried food, milk, and mixed nuts. And any extra curricular activities, we ask some partners, mainly civil society, to support the school health educator and the students with a package of cold meal, and mainly it's also snacks. And also we introduced it in summer camps. So it's a support and encouragement for students to participate and stay in these activities. Well, what is the model of our school snack model? Mainly is seasonal fruits, local ones, and vegetables with milk. And milk is unflavored, and sometimes baked peanuts, apple chips with dried fruit. So it's a package with high nutrition facts and healthy, and at the same time from the local market, from the local producers. And the idea is to create linkages with the local markets to minimize the impact of the price fluctuations. And it came in a period of multi-layer crisis where price fluctuation is high, and it impacted on the program. And when we had some facility, we introduced other items like baked brioche, or dates with brioche and resins, etc. To be able to track and to have more evidence and data, we introduce a digital tracking tool within this school snack model. So this tracking tool will arrive to the suppliers, to the local providers, but also to the transportation, and definitely to the administrators. So the idea is we notify, we ensure that the package arrived, and the system gives us information. It saves time, it enhances transparency, and we track where are the trucks and the logistics going. The second model is the healthy school kitchen model. Here we introduce cold sandwiches, and mainly with local products, chickpea hummus or cheeses, and local pita bread. But also it helps in increase the decentralized approach, and the school has more flexibility to produce and to work. Here also they work within their environment with local SMEs, the agribusinesses in the neighboring area. And we introduced the solar energy, where we had a cut of electricity. So we reduced the transportation cost, we increased the refrigeration, so the period of storage can go to up to 2 to 3 days. So these are models that came out with the reality of the instability living in the country, the crisis, the war, the cut of electricity. Parallel to this, we intended and we wanted to generate evidence. So we initiated few studies, and mainly the impact evaluation on this program in 2019, where we used a mixed method research across 12 SMP and 12 control schools. So the idea is to generate information and evidence about the program. Another study was with families and students, the assessment of 2023. Here, a phone survey was launched with around 1,050 families, and they interviewed around 950 students. Also, this gives us the feedback, the way forward, and give us more results about the program and the satisfaction of the beneficiaries. And the last one was the National School Assessment 2024, that it will be published soon in the last quarter of this year. The design was an interview of 6,700 students in 520 schools, and mainly school administrators. And we did a phone survey with around 4,500 families. This gives us an amazing data and information from the field. were the effect of the school feeding and the key findings? Mainly, the children who followed this program showed a higher dietary diversity, a better school engagement, and a real sense of community and belonging from the families and from even the school staff. We have proof that the participation in the school meal and the school feeding program pushed to decrease the dropout and enhance the retention in schools. The nutrition part. So the students value program, for example, nutrition is 60%, focus 23%, and it showed that more snack variety, larger meal helped a lot in this. The awareness of the family. The families appreciated the program, and the children really enjoyed, and they saw it like a support to their daily economic life, and definitely it was perceived as a healthy food. The last assessment, we saw different information, more quantitative one, like 12% of students reported not having any snack or money to buy snacks. So this helped a lot on how to direct the program. It showed also the reality, the socioeconomic reality of the students. 35% of the students in the morning and around 43% of the afternoon shifts, who are mainly refugees, they come to school walking, so sometimes from long distance. And the study also reflected that 64% of the morning students did not meet half of the global dietary guidelines. So reality is amazing, and the evidence to support more the planning for the coming years. A few challenges and lessons learned that we got from this program. First, on the challenges, education disruption affected a lot and impacted the cycle of the meal provision. Late 23 and 24, we had a war in Lebanon, and we had some destabilization of the school year. So this disruption affected the meal provision, affected also the supplies. The commodity price fluctuation affected also the unit cost of the meal, so it increased it a lot. These disruption have impact on the logistics, but also on the budget. Another thing important is we needed a lot to do ad hoc and last minute modifications, school stops, weather conditions, war. We stop school, we have few days of stop. This program is stopped, and it has effect on the supply chain a lot. And I give the example of the electricity cut to maintain the high food safety standards. So this is an example, and I can give others. Lessons learned. It's very important from our knowledge and experience to create the linkages with the local market, and this would minimize the impact on price fluctuations, but also the suppliers would know the reality of the school. Another lesson learned is how to go over the shortage of electricity or energy by using solar energy support and system. And the importance and the impact of the digital tool to enhance the tracking the model and finding the operational gap in the process of the logistics. And it came to our mind that it's very important to institutionalize this process and this initiative and the program by putting SOPs and guidelines on the school program for implementation. And it's very important to standardize it all over the system. What are our future steps and vision? On the school level, the objective is to increase the coverage of the program. It's very important to deliver it not only during the formal education, but with extracurricular activities and any non-formal education around the school. Also, it's very important on the school level to have clear SOPs and scenarios if any changes happen. So all the program stakeholders know what to do if there is any changes and how to proceed. On the government and central level, it's important to have a clear policy. And here what we are doing about school meal. And it's very important to enhance the monitoring and evaluation of this program and get regular data, KPIs, and outcome from this program in terms of indicators, data, etc. It is a key important on the central level, on the government, to strengthen the collaboration with other ministries, other national stakeholders, like syndicates of food supplier or others. Also, to conduct and regularly process evaluation and the reporting mechanism. The reporting mechanism helps us not only to get information and data, but to change this data and information, transform it to evidence, to information for a better decision-making and better guiding of this program. And on a global level, it is as important to reflect our experience, to show what we saw last week in Brazil, in Fortaleza, with the with the School Meal Coalition globally. We came back with some ideas on financing, on the sustainability, not only on this, but also on how to create a national coalition to support the school meal at a national level. And this is very important. We work on different levels to ensure the sustainability, to ensure the long-term impact of the school meal program to every child in the schools with the teachers, but only, and again, for the students who are in the middle, in the heart of all the operation of education. Thank you very much, and thank you for all. Thank you, and go back to you, Arlene.
Thank you. That was a fascinating presentation, very impressive. And thanks for all that you're doing to improve food environments in Lebanon. I'm sure the audience will also have questions for you. And if you haven't already written your questions in the Q&A space at the bottom of the screen, please do so right away. We're now moving to Sam Scott to guide us through the questions and answers. Sam is a research fellow at IFPRI focused on nutrition, diets, and health, and he's a great colleague. Thanks, Sam, and over to you.
Okay, thank you, Arlene, and thank you for these wonderful presentations. So we have a few questions that have already been answered by Patricia, so thank you for doing that, Patricia. I'll start with a question, some questions for Patricia, I think, and if, yeah, people can keep using the Q&A box to type more questions as I'm speaking. But one came from Ayala Weinman, which is about the pathways that when you optimize the menus, how do you get climate impact? So are you substituting with local foods and thereby reducing transportation related climate impacts? Or so could you talk about that a little bit, Patricia?
Sure. No, that's a really good question. And it's a really, I think, important issue to unpack with regards to localness and imported foods. Because when it comes to diet sustainability, we also need to think about supply chains and how things are transported. So, for example, stuff that are being imported from far away through cargo ships or, for example, trains might actually be much more climate friendly than foods are being transported within the country through, for example, trucks. And then we also have supply chains. So if we have short supply chains over longer distances, that could actually be more climate friendly than longer supply chains within a country. So it's not just to kind of address the issue of localness, that it's not always necessarily the most climate friendly or environmentally sustainable option. But to the question, so in this study we focused on foods. Kind of the LCA data, the environmental impact data, had averages for example, tomatoes or meat or grains, and we focused on or the algorithm focused on reducing those that had the higher impacts, irrespective of kind of where they come from. So the average impact, which is in general, and as we saw, the animal-based products do have those the predominantly highest impacts compared to plant-based foods.
So just to be clear, the transportation cost is not accounted for in the model.
No, so we have, so for example, minced beef, we would have the kind of average impact for that beef, irrespective of it being it's the average for imported products, but also products produced within the country.
Yeah.
And also to mention that only around 5 to 6% of a food's total impact is usually from transport. So also to say that the most important factor when we're trying to reduce our climate impact from our diets, it is about choosing or shifting the food groups rather than shifting where it comes from, or where the food come from. And in this study, we focused more on the studies that we've done. We focused on kind of shifting foods rather than the locality of them.
Okay, thank you. The next question was from Wilton Perez, and the question was about challenges faced in terms of feasibility for scaling up these optimized menus, particularly in low and middle income countries. So maybe you could share any perspectives on that.
Muy buena pregunta, Wilton. I think this is something that we've thought about quite a bit. If comparing the work that we did in Sweden and also now Ghana, one of the challenges that we see as for scaling is food accessibility. So in Sweden, if a chef or a cook would get a menu plan that has been planned and optimized centrally, they would, in 99% of the cases, they would be able to follow it. Whereas in another context, which is more, especially in lower middle income contexts, which have other types of challenges with maybe not always having access to foods, the foods that they need because of there are just shortages on the market, the prices some days are higher than expected, then that creates issues at the delivery level. So even if we can optimize and plan these menus at a central level, the challenges in delivery are greater, I think, because of these fluctuations and insecurities with regards to access. So I think we're thinking about this, and we're thinking about how to kind of create support tools at that level too. And that's something that we just need to explore and do more research on how to create those support tools, I think.
Okay, and maybe a related question, Patricia, before I move over to Lebanon side, is just thinking about how we can integrate culture when making these decisions to optimize menus, and sort of what does the process look like for taking into account those local or cultural factors?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I mean, I will take the example of the introducing the brioche. It was the idea. It was a pilot to present the brioche as a supplement with vitamins to the children, and also to see the feedback and their satisfaction about it. So usually we know in our culture that the students would like brioche, and that's why it was that it was introduced. And the feedback, qualitative feedback that we got from students is that they wanted something more fulfilling for them, and this is the idea. So definitely we are going to have focus group. Until now we didn't have, I saw the question, so we don't have formal feedback, but we are in the process of gathering their opinions, their reaction on this. But the primary information that we get is something that is solid in terms of they liked it, and then it is substantial in terms of they don't feel the hunger, mainly because of the dates resonance with the in the brioche itself. Over to you.
Thank you for answering that question. I might ask a question just to continue on the Lebanon side. I was very impressed by the program in Lebanon, and one thing that I don't think you covered in depth was about financing, and it seems like a very ambitious program. So I'm wondering if you faced any challenges and what kind of maybe lobbying, or if you had to convince people that this is worth doing. Could you share any experience about?
Absolutely. I mean, the whole idea is to base it on a comprehensive way. First, we're trying to generate information, data, technical about the importance of the school meal program as one of the pillars for retention in school. Number two is really to reduce indirectly the hunger in terms of the poverty or poverty elevation methods. One of it within the school, because the school is organized and they can reach every child enrolled in the school. Number three, there is some dimension of pure, I would say, health dimension, obesity or malnutrition. So this program addresses really these topics. And number four, working and reflecting the idea of also participating on the local economy is important. Bringing the supplies and the raw material from the local, from the neighboring producer. And this idea, I want to take it up and mainstream about it and see and create this coalition, the national one, of bringing the stakeholder, the World Food Program with its good reputation, the best global best practice, and show it for local public agencies, non-governmental, and local producers in terms of association of local producers or managers. I mean, the National Food Bank and other stakeholders, to convince them to invest or in kind or financially in this project. The idea is to create a kind of a sustainability in the provision, but also ensure a minimum of financial sustainability so it continues. We're in the beginning of this process. Fortaleza was an eye-opener, but other participation. The idea is to make the sustainability, we need to put all the ingredients together, so we ensure sustainability in terms of financing dimension, but also the provision of goods on a regular basis. And this requires stability, but also interest about the program, not only from us at the Ministry of Education, but the different stakeholders. Awareness raising, bring evidence, and definitely create a real advocacy method to convince the stakeholder about it. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. And I see that we're 1 minute away, so That was a really strong response to end the Q&A on, and I will therefore pass it back to Arlene for her closing.
Thank you, Sam. Fascinating discussion, and thanks to all of the presenters. You've given us a lot to think about. In fact, we'll be thinking about food environments probably as we leave this session and ourselves go through the rest of our day, or tonight as we go through food environments, right? So as we wrap up, this is a quick reminder. Last slide, please. We hope you'll be able to join us again for the next sessions. We'll talk about the next two IFPRI GCNF webinar sessions on October 16th. The topic will be school meal programs and regenerative agriculture. And on October 30th, we'll have a look at what's on the menu for school meal programs. And we'll link back to some of the discussion we had today. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much.